Hello YouTube, Alan back with another video on my own this time. Tony's not with me, which now seems odd. Strange how it's gone that way. But anyway, it's E3 week, so I thought I'd share my thoughts like I did last year. Now, I don't have time to kind of go into 2 hours and multiple videos like I did last year. I haven't watched that much, haven't watched all the conferences and all the various trailers and whatnot. But I've been keeping up to date with what's been going on and just get adjusted there. Um, so I'm going to give a quick run through just my thoughts on what's happened so far and how people have reacted. I always find it amusing how people react. By and large, E3 is never that much of a surprise. You always have an idea what's going to happen. And when it comes to game announcements, Microsoft are going to always have the next installment of their key franchises, games like Halo and Forza. Sony the same with their franchises. You'll have God of Wars, you'll have Killzones, Uncharted, things like that. And Nintendo, Mario, Donkey Kong, Yoshi, so on. So I always find it amusing when those games get revealed, or updates, or remasters, or whatever, and people go, "Oh, it's just the same old stuff. It's just the same old thing." Well, what were we expecting? That's the business. But anyway, the shows themselves. Well, I'm, I'm going to talk a little bit about Microsoft, Sony, and then mainly probably on Nintendo because I see more of their stuff than the other guys. I'll talk about Nintendo at the end, so skip forward if you want to see Nintendo stuff. Microsoft. Well, anyone who managed to get through my last nearly hour-long epic will know Xbox One I am not in the least bit interested in. I don't care how good the games look, and to be honest, I don't think they look that much more remarkable than what's on PC or what's on PlayStation 4. Um, or the games that they have, because a lot of them are just going to be cross-platform. Call of Duty's, Battlefield, so on. They're going to be on PlayStation 4. Um, so you get your usual Microsoft franchises. Nowhere near enough to overcome the frankly horrific anti-consumer business practices of Microsoft's part. Uh, a terrible, terrible system, very expensive, and offers nothing. I think it is terrible that a consumer should support that device. Really, I do. You're making a bad choice and setting a precedent for a bad business model. I think we'll find that even the retailers themselves aren't particularly favourable to Microsoft's approach. You know, you have businesses like GameStop, Game, and Co. that make the bulk of their profit on second hand. And Microsoft have basically blocked out. So they've basically told the retailers, screw you. And the customers, screw you. So the only one who wins here really is Microsoft. For that, I can see companies like GameStop not particularly pushing the system, not particularly giving the games much shelf space. You're going to end up with a niche platform. As it becomes a niche platform, it doesn't take off, publishers will pull away, especially if the PlayStation 4 version of games start to sell more. And remember, the Xbox has only done particularly well in America. Rest of the world, not so much. I think they've shown nothing that's going to change that. Sports and whatnot, very American driven. So it might be successful there, but even then, I'm not so sure. I love their response to well, what about consumers that don't have always on internet access? Buy an Xbox 360. Oh yeah, so buy your old stuff. That's not really an answer either. But anyway, I'm not going to talk too much more about that because I think it's very clear. I mean, yeah, the games look pretty. I, I just I just can't. To me, it's too big a hurdle. If some people, maybe it isn't, but to me, it is. And I've seen. I was looking at a poll on GameFAQs about which of the top three consoles would you be most interested in, and they're basically various orderings, one, two, and three. Um, the Xbox One was only their first choice by 3.5% of people. I think Microsoft may have actually underestimated just how much their decisions for always on and piracy concerns and so on and so forth has going to kind of bite them in the bum. And I hope they fail because they could do with it. But anyway, so I obviously I was biased looking at it, so I'm not even going to say what really the game said to me, because I couldn't look at them in any sort of clearly objective way. I just seen the system through the games, and Microsoft did not address any of the concerns that people have with the system. So there we go, Microsoft crap out of the way. Now Sony, on the other hand, I was surprised by. I didn't know which way they were going to fall. There was a lot of talk that they were going to implement some form of piracy, or not piracy, secondhand, blockout restrictions, but they don't seem to be. In fact, they seem to be targeting Microsoft. There was one great part in their conference where they had a demonstration video of how you share, your games with your friends with PlayStation 4, and they show like Kaz handing a game to his friend and going, thanks. Clearly a direct attack at Microsoft's restrictive practice. It seems like they're taking the PlayStation 3 model, from what I understand. You can play any game you like. This game's not locked, pre-owned, whatever you want to do. You want to trade in your game, great. Because of course, people do seem to forget that a good number of the new sales are generated from pre-owned sales. So people go in, like every single video game retailer that I see will have shops signs up saying, trade in this old game and you can get the latest release for a $5 or whatever. People are buying the new games using the old game as leverage. So they are promoting a greater sell through of the new game too. So I'm still going on about Xbox One because it's so stupid. But anyway, PlayStation 4. The design looks a bit funky. It's okay, I guess. I'm not a massive. Well, it looks better than the Xbox One. That's just monolith. It's like the thing from 2001. Big black thing. I'm not a mad fan of the look of the PlayStation 4, but I'm not a mad fan of the look of any Sony console. So I can give or take it. It's going to sit under an entertainment unit. You're not going to really care at the end of the day. Specs very, very similar to the Xbox. It's going to be like the current generation where it really doesn't matter. The difference is going to be so marginal. Price point, not too bad. They're saying €399, $399, and what, $350 sterling. So very good dollar price there, and even a euro price. And to put it in perspective, when the PlayStation 3 launched in Ireland, that was €629. So it's quite a bit less. Assuming that they don't jump the price up retailers on the day, which they might do because we've slightly higher VAT rate here. But if it's in around that ballpark, it's not too bad. Sure, when the Wii launched here, most places were looking for about $350 or so for the premium bundle. So, it's not too bad a price for a launch price, I guess. Little high, but it's to be expected. I'm a little disappointed about the talk that you'll need a PlayStation Plus account to play online, which you don't need for the PlayStation 3, so they're moving more towards the Xbox Live model, which, I don't know, you played for the system, you paid for the game, that's frankly enough in my book. So yeah. They showed off lots of games and whatnot. To be fair, I actually haven't seen as many games for the PlayStation 4 and from Sony's conference as I have from the other conferences. And I believe there was a lot of remasters or remakes coming out for the systems too, so I'd have to look into that. Apparently the Vita got a bit of a look into, but I think they need to do a bit more to make it a more viable system. It's really been slow going on that platform. It's almost like people have just forgotten it's there, with mobiles and tablets taking so much more of the advertising space and kind of mindset of people. It's very difficult for a dedicated handheld console type device to kind of win over people. Both the 3DS and the PS Vita have struggled with that. Some good stuff coming out for the current generation too. Assassin's Creed, Watch Dogs. That kind of ties into the Ubisoft conference, Rayman Legends. Their conference is a tale of two stories like last year. Some of the games they showed was very good. The presentation, their presenters are terrible. They should be shot. That woman is just awful. And when I speak of woman, it's not the Microsoft yeah, going back to Microsoft, God, what were they thinking with that Killer Instinct unveil and had the two people on stage demoing? Go take it, you know you like it, whatever the hell that was all about. That was not either terrible scripting or very very odd off the cuff stuff. But look up the whole you know thing if you don't know what I'm talking about. It's all over YouTube. Anyway, back to Ubisoft. Their games look good. They looked what you'd expect. Nothing surprising really from Ubisoft. Their franchises, just like everyone else, evolved. Same with EA. You know, you get all the yearly updates. To me, maybe it's a jaded thing or whatever, but it becomes hard to be blown away by a lot of this stuff because, well, that's just that's what they're going to do. You're going to see the next Call of Duty. You're going to see the next Battlefield. You're going to see the next Assassin's Creed. And a lot of them look very pretty, but they currently look very pretty, so that's no surprise. Yeah, I thought Ubisoft's games though were good. They had a solid showing. EA had a fairly solid showing too. Um, and really, I thought most people were fairly good this year. There was lots of decent games. There was a lot of focus on what we might consider core games versus the casual market. Don't get me wrong, there was still casual games. There was like the Just Dances and or was it not Rock Band, Rocksmith or something like that. But it was a lot more core games shown as well, and a lot of indie stuff for download services, given a little bit more screen time too, which was nice. But anyway, on to the one that I spent the most time with, and that's Nintendo. And this seems to have become, I'm going to say controversial now. Real controversy is Microsoft with both their online, their secondhand, and that rape joke thing. Um, Nintendo's controversy is more just fans and fanboys. I can see why. They didn't have a typical conference. They didn't go out on the Kodak Theatre and have one of their presentations. They just did a Nintendo Direct video. I'm not surprised. They had no hardware to unveil. There was no 3DS redesign, which, to be honest, I was wondering were they going to do that. Um, there was no, yeah, there was no alterations to Wii. There was no hardware add-ons. There was no accessories. There was, it was basically just software, just games. So the cost involved in putting on that show and when I watched the presentation, in some ways I liked the fact that it was just which more here's the game, here's the game, here's the game, and less filler. When you compare that to the Ubisoft presentation, the games are good. The stuff in between wasn't good. On the flip side, there's a greater spectacle about having the full conference. So anyway, it was interesting. I was just curious about the games more than anything else. It was a shame it was all done by Iwata, whose English is it's very clear, but it's a little slow, so it can make it a little tiring to watch the videos. And would have been better perhaps if Reggie or uh, someone else, maybe even Bill Trinan, who would be who's a native English speaker, would have done the English presentation, because I'm assuming there was a Japanese presentation as well. But that's besides the point. Nintendo got a lot of flack for just doing the core franchises again. Oh, that's to be expected. Um, when I watched the conference, I thought that was fine. I thought most of the games they were showing looked good. They showed a lot, some Wii U stuff, some 3DS stuff, and on both platforms the games looked good. But when I thought back and I did think, it does seem like they could have gone the extra mile. They showed the new Mario 3D World, which is basically the next game. Mario 3D Land on the 3DS and do that on the Wii, whatnot. And the changes there is that they got 4 player, and the 4 characters are going to be like the characters in Super Mario Brothers 2 on the NES. I imagine they were trying to target. Oh, look, the NES. It's kind of going back to the lineage thing and get all the NES fans kind of interested. But it doesn't seem to have. People basically wanted Galaxy 3 and they haven't got it and they're a bit disappointed. Uh, and they also didn't seem to really like the cat power up. It doesn't seem to look that different to say the raccoon power up to me, but whatever. I think it looks like it'll be a fun game. I wasn't mad keen on 3D Land, but I think it looks more interesting on Wii U. Um, they all what was the next one? Of course, another Mario game was Mario Kart 8. The big gimmick this time is that you have anti gravity carts and they can go up the sides of walls and whatnot. As soon as I seen that, I couldn't help but think, isn't this like F Zero? Why aren't we just doing an F Zero game if you want an anti gravity game? Especially given that Nintendo have let that franchise lay dormant for quite a while now, since the GameCube game in 2004 or something, so nearly 10 years, and that was done by Sega. Frankly, get Sega back in and have them do another F Zero game. Seems like a HD F Zero game would be great. Um, and Mario Kart, it's going to be fun. They're basically making a compilation. You got the motorbikes back, you got the gliders back, you got the underwater thing back. So it's like as they seem to do, kind of kitchen sink approach. I'm sure it'll be fun. I'm a little tired of Mario Kart. I didn't really get into the last two entries that much, but it's still a solid game. So, but it's kind of like anything. It's kind of like all the Call of Duties, all the Halos. If you play too many of them, you kind of get a little jaded. I did find one comment that Nintendo made a bit hypocritical. They said how they don't do yearly updates to their franchises, which is why they're not in danger of becoming worn out or whatever. The claim that has been made against things like, I guess, Rock Band and Guitar Hero in the past, and maybe even Call of Duty and whatnot. I was like, well, you pretty much do. Every single conference you're going to have multiple Mario games, not the exact same one, but we just had new Super Mario Brothers Wii U. We got new Super Luigi U. Then you got new Super Mario Brothers 3D Land or World or whatever. So there is a lot of the same franchises getting beat over the head. And on that team, then their big surprise game was Donkey Kong Country Returns Tropical Freeze, not too long following on from Donkey Kong Country Returns 3D, which was an update of Donkey Kong Returns on the Wii by Retro Studios. Looks nice, introduces Dixie Kong. A little. I didn't really get into to Donkey Kong Country Returns. I loved the first three, didn't really like Returns, so whatever. Not that keen on it. It might be good, but I definitely take a wait and see approach. And a lot of people were hoping Retro Studios were working on a Metroid game, so maybe that'll be the next one that they'll probably do, I'd imagine, in fact. Perhaps that was a little disappointing as the big surprise. They also showed a lot of second and third party games. A game called X, which I assume is a working title. It's going to be like a follow up to Xenoblade, or by the same guys, Monolith, who are second party, so it is kind of a Nintendo game. They Bayonetta 2, which looks like Bayonetta. They chopped off all her hair, strangely, which is weird because her hair was her costume, so I'm curious how that works now. Well, I'm not that curious, you don't have to tell me. Nearly forgetting them. Last year I made notes, I was so professional, wrote them all down. But this year, nope. Going off memory, and apparently my memory's not good enough. There was a hell of a lot of third party games, and this is where I guess the Wii U trouble does kick in. I mean, they had Batman, they had a few Disney games, and they had Deus Ex, Human Revolution, Director's Cut or something like that. But that's an old game, and in fact Tony just got it from me recently. So, Assassin's Creed. I think they didn't show it, but Call of Duty is going to be on the system too. So they are getting a lot of the cross-platform games now, which is good. But they're not getting a lot of exclusives, and the ones that they were getting have been pulled back. And companies like Ubisoft have said that they're going to scale back their support, and EA have pretty much got no plans to support the Wii U, which is pretty bad. If you don't end up having your yearly update of FIFA, you're in trouble. I think as a platform, the Wii U does have some serious hurdles to overcome. I don't think it will be as successful as the Wii, or perhaps even the N64. It might be more like a GameCube style system at the moment. It'll probably have a core base that will buy it, and they may be successful in marketing towards the younger demographic again, and perhaps an older demographic who are more interested in, kind of playing with the family. So you're kind of, you can play with your kids, and a two-way thing with the asymmetrical gameplay. And the kid thing is important as well, because I mean, one of the key aspects of the console design is that you essentially don't need a television. You can play the games on a controller, so you could be in the same room as the rest of your family while they might be watching the television, and that's quite important because it again removes one of the barriers from having a console in the family room. Uh, I don't think they've pushed that aspect enough. I don't think they've made that message clear to people. Even when they use terms like asymmetric gameplay, I think that's a confusing term. It's perhaps too technical to really take off. You show something like Wii Sports, someone like swinging a baseball bat, and you swing the controller. Oh yeah, I get it. I don't think they've got as clear a message, but that's I guess that's reflected in the conferences where there isn't perhaps as much support. Had Scribblenauts as well. Again, it looks like another fine Scribblenauts game if you're interested. They had Art Academy. Okay, see, I'm surprised at how popular those games seem to be. This seems to be like the third Art Academy game. I guess there's a lot of people who really want art packages on consoles. I'm really surprised by that. I understand. I've seen lots of the drawings that people have done on Miiverse, and they're great. But really, that's what people want. I'm surprised. Yeah, I'd imagine that's a niche product. I don't know, but there you go. You have that. It's certainly an expanded audience thing. And speaking of expanded audience, they had news that Wii Fit U and Wii Play U were going to be pushed back a few months each. Again, they look decent, nice graphics and so on, and they will do what they do in their audience or for their audience fine. Um, but they're not going to appeal to core gamers. At least they didn't focus too heavily on them. They had a game called something 101. I've forgotten the name, but Word 101 looked interesting. Talk about using the touch screen to draw your kind of your attack, and it would be reflected on the TV screen and so on. You don't see a lot of that using the touchscreen as an input, as you would with the DS. I guess because the developers are trying to think, well, if we want to have the off-screen play, then they won't be able to necessarily use the touchscreen too. So, they don't. It's not always guaranteed like it is on the DS. Interesting. And I mean, I thought some of the games were interesting or as expected. And Mario has been expected, and these things has been a little bit different. Not system sellers, and perhaps that's where Nintendo are getting the grief from now. They look decent, and if you weren't jaded, they'd probably be really good, but they're not system sellers. Or at least I don't think they are. Just Dance, as I mentioned, of course it's going to probably be a bigger hit than Bayonetta 2 and all these other games that people were more interested in. And Zelda. There was a couple of Zeldas. Zelda Wind Waker HD remake. To be honest, although it looks nice, I'm not entirely convinced by the graphics. There's something about the distance, especially when you're on the ocean. It seems a bit blurry or something in the distance, kind of fuzzy. Not, I don't know. Maybe that was probably intentional, but I would have liked to have seen it crisper. It seemed a bit crisper in the preview images. But the graphics are nice, and it is a great game, and they do seem to have. They're talking about refining a few of the gameplay elements, making it faster to sail on the ocean, and doing something to improve that fetch quest near the end. So that'll be good, and they're going to rework the Tingle Tuner to tie into Miiverse, so you can basically put messages in a bottle and throw them out, and they can wash up on the shore of the island, and you can get clues that way, which is a nice little touch for an ocean-based game. Price point is probably critical on this game because it's a remake. So people are going to find it a little tough to swallow full retail for even if it is 1080p or whatever for the same game again. And speaking of same games, while it's not quite the same game, there's a certain ring of it in the 3DS title. Given it a name, it's now A Link to New Worlds, or something like that. A Link Between Worlds, that's it. And the overworld is going to be the exact same as A Link to the Past, albeit with 3D, and you can do a Paper Mario style walking along walls thing. Whoa. This is where I was start to think that maybe Nintendo kind of gone the extra mile. We have a Wii U Zelda game that's a remake. We have a 3DS Zelda game that's reusing the overworld from an older game. We have, a Mario Kart game that's going to be, well, I guess that's a bit different because of the anti-gravity thing. You have the 3D Mario game being based on 3D Land, so yeah, I can kind of see even Donkey Kong Country Returns kind of look like Donkey Kong Country. Donkey Kong Country Returns, Tropical Freeze look like Donkey Kong Country Returns. Oh, that name's confusing. So I could see that there was maybe we needed a little bit more to spice things up, to show that they were going the extra mile. They actually didn't show Pikmin in the video too, presumably because it's pretty much done. But that would have at least been something a little different. Yeah, there is apparently a unique Zelda game for the Wii U in the works, but it's a little. They're going to save it for a little longer before showing it, which is probably good because it's not going to be out for ages. But yeah, back to Zelda 3DS, A Link Between Worlds. It looks fine, looks interesting. I'm not 100% keen on the art style, but it'll it's not bad. The dungeons look like they'll be interesting, and they're all new. But unless they're going to do something with the overworld, or there's something that we haven't seen yet that's going to tweak things or make it newer than it seems, I'm not 100% sold on that idea of reusing the overworld. I mean, part of Zelda is the exploration of an overworld. If you already know where everything is, it kind of takes some of the game out of it. You've basically played it before. So yeah, we'll see how that one goes. There was a few games like Mario and Luigi Dream Team that we've already seen before, Yoshi's Island 3DS. I thought the graphics looked a bit pixelated on that or something. Looked okay if you're into Yoshi's Island. And then probably the final big game, I've probably forgotten a few others, but the biggest game that they were showing off was, of course, Smash Brothers for the 3DS. Oh, no, I forgot Pokemon. That actually looked fairly fine. Again, you're either into Pokemon or you're not. I like Pokemon, so I thought it looked like a nice evolution. They can always go a bit further on Pokemon than they do, but this one looked like it was stepping it up a bit from the DS game, so that's good. New types, new Pokemon, yada yada yada. Smash Brothers, 3DS, Wii U. I actually liked that. I thought that presentation was one of the more interesting ones, in particular because there was a developer's talk as well after. Actually, was it in it? I can't remember. I watched so many videos where is it Sakurai or whatever his name is, the head guy doing Smash Brothers, spoke about a few of the fine details, like why he put the black outline on the characters on the 3DS version, to make them stand out more against the detail in the background, so on the smaller screen, which is interesting because it's a small detail. It explains the reasoning behind why things are different between handheld and console. The handheld version is going to have stages based more on handheld games. The console version is going to have stages based on console games. New changes to characters like Bowser. They explained how that's going to work, and Pit and Samus and so on. Although interestingly, Samus was Samus, not Zero Suit Samus, so I wonder will there be a change there or whatever. And new characters are always interesting to see. And I love the way that how they were taught out. They had the villager from Animal Crossing, and they like his abilities is he collects things, so he can actually absorb powers. Like if someone fires a projectile, he can absorb it and throw it back. and pick things up and whatnot, and dig with a shovel and whatnot. Very Animal Crossing, very well integrated. The Wee Fish trainer is another one, and did a funny little video introducing her where Mario, Link, and Kirby were all they were doing Wee Fish, trying to do the yoga puzzle, and she taps one of them on the back and then kicks them away. And all her moves are based on kind of stretches and yoga poses and whatnot. So, inventive. I like that thing. You see to think about it a lot. And then finally, they announced Mega Man is going to find, after being requested for years, he's going to be in the game. And I love the graphics actually, and his stage and his character model, and again looks really well thought about. They have the rush, jump, and they have the different abilities he can get in the games and whatnot, and the Mega Buster and so on. It looked like they thought more than they thought probably about Sonic and Snake. I think in the previous game there seems to be more effort going into Mega Man. And the games on a Wii U looks very nice. It looks very crisp, but it looks like Smash Brothers. So it's not really going to. If people were expecting it, it's not the end of the world. And the trailer wasn't as dramatic as some of the previous Smash Brothers trailer. It wasn't as kind of epic, dun dun. It was just started off with a letter being picked up in Animal Crossing Town with the Smash Brothers seal, and it was a lower key, I guess you'd say. It was amusing. It was good, and I definitely thought the developer insight was quite interesting. Even as I said, fine details like why add the animations on punches and things like that, so that it'd be more dynamic, and you can kind of see it when you're told. You do see it. Probably the most interesting game from my perspective, because I enjoy those games, but I can see why people were a bit disappointed. Not. I mean, a lot of those games will sell really well, but I think they're not necessarily going to change a lot of people's minds about the system. And from that, at the moment, it has to be PlayStation 4 and Sony are in the ascendancy again from that conference. Microsoft have been shooting themselves in the foot and the head and everywhere else they can shoot themselves. And Nintendo, they seem to be missing that step at the moment. I'm not sure what they can do to recover, or if they plan to. If they're happy with their market and building up their base. One thing people have been saying is, they should give up on the Wii U and start another console, or just give up and go third party. And I think third party would be a poor decision for Nintendo. First of all, they get licensing money from third party developers to develop on their platform, so that's a revenue stream that's gone straight away. And second, their games have much greater exposure as exclusives on their platform than they would as just yet another third party on, say, the PlayStation or the Xbox. They're just going to be swallowed up. And if you look at Sega, they've essentially gone that way. They were the big first party publisher for their systems. Their games sold well. But as they've gone third party, while it helped them in the immediate future after their transition to kind of stay alive, look at them now. They have lost some of their identity, and some of that's down to kind of corporate changes and whatnot. But it's also down to just struggling to compete within a bigger ecosphere. Their games have become forced to focus on their biggest franchises like Sonic and whatnot. And they very little break out of that, which is unfortunate. And I think Nintendo would find themselves in a similarly difficult position if they didn't have a platform. Actually, speaking of that, they also have Sonic's Lost Worlds on the Wii U. I forgot about that game. That's exclusive. And that looks pretty good. Interestingly, it reminds me a lot of Sonic Extreme, which, when you think about it, actually has a fair bit of Mario Galaxy about it too. So I'm definitely interested in that one. After Sonic Generations, I think they might have gotten a bit of momentum back in the Sonic franchise, which is a great thing in my book. Even Sonic Colors, people said was quite good. So let's hope that Lost Worlds keeps it going. But yeah, there's plenty of other games lists out there. I'm not going to go on about it anymore because my throat is so dry from talking, and ultimately repeating the same points. So yeah, Microsoft, Sony looking good for this generation it seems, and Nintendo must try harder. Feels like a school report. But anyway, hope you enjoyed, and we'll be back with another video sometime soon-ish, maybe.